couple, or is it an
It's not quite. It's an Epiphone. It's
Yeah,
not up to that standard, but it's a little GS Mini Taylor in the back. That's kind of like the workhorse guitar. Let's just get
love
played
it.
by even the daughter plays that too. So
Yeah, nice, nice. My girls love the guitar, man. I don't know. They're all about it. Like I've got a couple wiggle songs down on guitar that I can
nice.
play. I can play I can play Rockabye Your Bear. I can play,
All the
Big Red
essentials.
Car, all these songs for them, and they
Nice.
seem to like it, man. But they all come up, goodness me. So yeah, 100%. There's a certain chillness about musicians.
Well, I wouldn't call myself a muso, but uh, at least a hack at
Anyone
home.
can dabble. Dabbling is a bit of fun, man.
That's it, man. That's it.
Cool, bro. Okay, well, we'll do a little intro and let's get it done, boys and girls. Well, welcome back to the Coaches to the Moon podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am here with Patrick Galang from the High Ticket Sales Academy, and Patrick's a sales trainer and a recruiter. So what he's doing is he's actually helping coaches and consultants to get off the phones themselves and kind of outsource their sales to an amazing team who Patrick is training and bringing together for them, because I believe that makes a more scalable business. And we'll talk about that. So Patrick, I'm keen to get into it. Thank you so much
Sure,
for being
man.
here.
Hey, thanks for having us. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So Patrick and I just found out that our kids are 5 days apart in age. And so this man is in the trenches, just like me. You got the teeth coming through at the moment.
Got the teeth coming through, painfully coming through, man. It's just slow. I don't know how long this thing goes for, this whole teething situation, but man, it is. Oh, we're feeling it as much as she's feeling it.
That's what I'm thinking. They've got like 3 or 4 teeth and it's a nightmare, but they got like 30 to go.
And I've heard the molar. I think that's what it's called, the molars. The back ones are the worst ones too. So, and she's only got like a few on the front.
Yes.
So, man, and you can see it, like you can see it coming out, but it just takes forever. So I don't know. I'm hoping that she's been through all the hard stuff, but from what I've heard, there's more hard stuff to come. So yeah, that'll be fun. Well, you know all about it, right?
Yeah, man, we're going to be going through daughters at the exact same time. I'm just being more efficient by doing 2 at once.
Yeah.
so if another one comes out for you, you'll know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
And we're just having to figure out twice as fast. So we've all got our swings and
nice.
roundabouts to everyone. No, congratulations. Nice. The lockdown baby's been nice. I feel like you and I have had a really unique opportunity to spend a lot of time with our newborns that a lot of people would have felt the pressure to go back to work. How's it been for you?
Yeah. Well, funny story about a few minutes ago, I had to text you to say, hey, I'm just nursing my baby back to sleep after being up. It's been great, man. I suppose it's given us the opportunity to, well, not to force us be at home, but just to spend the time with her as well and make the most out of it. So, and lucky for my wife and I, we're both online anyway. So, and we have been since, pre-pandemic. So, having her around has definitely made the gaps during the day much more enjoyable. So, it's been good, man. It's been good.
100%. And the more we can leverage, the more we can outsource, the better. And that's exactly what you're doing to help coaches and consultants. So I gave you a brief little intro there. Can you just explain how your business works and why your service is so important for coaches?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've worked in a lot of sales teams in the last few years, coaching businesses in particular. And, some of them had already established teams, but quite a few, sort of like that might be the first hire or things like that. And a lot of coaches do, right? They go through a process where they get to a point where all their hard work is bringing in all the income and they become the bottleneck of the business. So, I mean, when I was working with newer coaches at the start, when I sort of dabbled into this, it wasn't so much that, that they knew how to close and they knew how to sell and things like that. It's just, it comes to a point where they've just got no time to do anymore. So once they figured out that they're the bottleneck to their business, It's like, okay, now it's time to bring in somebody. Who do I bring in? How do I bring them in? What questions do I ask? How do I know if I'm going to have a good one? How can I get them doing what I'm doing like as quickly as possible? And so, all those little things, I just done a lot of it in the past in corporate world and, sort of online now. So yeah, typically when a coach is figured out that they're the bottleneck in the business because of they're doing the end-to-end sales process, it's kind of where we can step in and do the hiring, do all the vetting, still their team that we build for them, but ideally they get a person who's been vetted, who is going to get trained on the right way to do things, and obviously to fit their business model and to fit the culture that they want to breed as well. So that's kind of the crux of it, man. That when we're working with teams, is we get to instill them in their culture, because I think that's important as well, right? And especially if you're doing things yourself, what sort of culture is good? How am I going to pay these guys? How often am I going to talk to them? What question can they ask me? Especially if it's the first one, it can be quite stressful.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Culture is definitely something we should get into, because you and I, we were both actually working with a team within the last year who were run by James Wellington, who was actually my first guest on this podcast, one of my best friends in the world.
Who is awesome.
Awesome guy. I love him
guy.
to bits. Runs an intense team. And so their team is very, very results driven. And that guy will happily not sleep and just crunch numbers and just win all the time. And he kills it and he loves it. Yeah. You and I, we both had new babies and we decided to go in different directions away from that business, because that was our culture. And now I'm building my own team. And I think my team's culture reflects my own. When I speak with my VAs overseas, they'll be in a singlet, they'll be sitting on the floor, they'll be outside, and they'll still get the job done. And that's kind of how I run. Yeah. And so when a business comes to you that is a more intense business, how do you go about finding a salesperson who can fit that culture?
Yeah, so that's a really good point, man, because I think even like for me, maybe 5 years ago, I would have been that person for sure. And I would have thrived it, because James is not just an intense dude, but like he's pretty honest and he's very results driven. And that's what you need for that type of business as well, So, and I think that culture, breeds that sort of success as well. So when we go into, a coach's business for the first time, it's really about what sort of the values that they run. How do they prefer to have their team sort of communicated with? Like in a typical day, what would that look like? You know what I mean? Like what happens if this happens? How would you deal with it? And how would you deal with it if somebody in your team had to deal with that situation in the same way? So, and there's no right or wrong in it. It's just really the stage of life where that coach is and where that business owner is. So typically we'll find out, what's important to them, what's the priorities during the day, and how would they feel if the staff member had these things that they had to do. And that's kind of when we bring in some new setters. We're more looking not so much the skill, but like what's their priorities in their life as well, right? Like what would be important with them, because you could get the best salesperson, appointment setter, closer, and if they're not with the culture, it just doesn't work. It's just the odd one, they'd be the odd one out, and it might last for a few months, but not for much longer than that, So that's typically what we would do when we get in there. Just try to fit that personality with that coach as well. So half the time it's like personality, right? So
I think, more than half the time. I don't know have you ever worked in, retail or hospitality or anything like that?
Yeah, spent tons of time in hospitality and retail. Yeah, both of them actually.
Yeah, well, I came fully from hospitality for about 12 years. And when you get a new chef or waiter in to train them, on a trial, you're looking for base level skills, but mostly attitude, mostly personality. How do they fit in? Do they stand in the corner shyly? Do they come in with way too much bravado? Or do they kind of have that happy medium where they're friendly and polite, but also show some confidence? Because you can tell the first 5 minutes of a a trial building a team in a hospitality venue, because I've done it, I've run my own places and I've managed places. And if a chef comes in and starts talking shit immediately, they're out. They're trying too hard. And if someone comes in and they don't say a word the whole night, unfortunately, they're probably out as well, because you need that kind of cohesion in the environment. So I think personality is definitely more important than skill, because you run a sales academy. Sales is a skill that can be taught. Do you believe that anyone in the world can learn to sell, or do you think there needs to be a certain baseline there?
I mean, I think everyone can be taught, but there has to be, as far as baseline is concerned, there's a couple of probably main traits that you need to have, and one of them is definitely being rejected and not getting offended so easily. Not even by your team, but especially by the people you're talking to. I think you just have to have that. You can build it over time, but if you get worn down by it, that's typically where results are going to go. So you have to be able to have that resilience, and that's probably the main thing. Plus, you need to be interested in people as well. That's just a must. But I think the skill itself, can be taught. And then once people sort of learn that, I made a post the other day about how appointment setters don't always make the best closers, and the best closers don't make the best sales managers. Just like athletes, the best athletes in the world don't become the best coaches in the world. So there's I think in an appointment setting scenario, there's a certain skill. When you're trying to bring people on through the DMs, and then as a closer, it's definitely a certain skill level and personality that can sort of run that as well. So learn the skills, and then you find your spot, you find your place in all of those. And as an appointment setter, as a closer, you double down on that and you make the most out of it, so that's what I think. And there's a few people that can do the whole spectrum and be really good at it. But I think if somebody's building a team, you've got to be mindful about, okay, is that person like a career appointment setter, or are they an appointment setter that can go and become a closer? So, that those sort of things are important as well.
It totally is. And you touched on something really interesting there, appointment setting via DMs. That's something that's probably didn't exist 5 years ago. And so, the way I think of an appointment setter, and you've made me completely rethink my own process, because as you know, I'm hiring an appointment setter at the moment.
Yeah.
I came to you, and I now realize I came to you to do what you do for money for free, and didn't even realize that that's what you did. So I apologize for trying to get
that's all right, man.
But the appointment setter thing, I just envision this person who sits down, gets a list of leads, and just calls leads and moves people along the line into, a close situation with the closer or the business owner, whatever.
Yeah.
Appointment setting now, going in through the DMs, that's a whole new game. That's a whole new ball game. That's not sales skills on the phone. That's knowing how to move someone from a cold DM to a phone call. And I know that is something that every coach in the world wants to do better, because they're all sliding into DMs on Instagram and Facebook all the time. Do you have any sort of just gold that is going to help people to move people from a DM situation into a conversation?
Yeah, man. You're right though. Like a few years ago, it used to be a massive thing, selling through chat, and people sliding in DMs, cold or warm, whatever it is. And I know it's a big part of the game. It's just the way, especially in the last 12 months, but that's how most communication sort of happens. So before, it was on the phone, either inbound or outbound sort of conversations. Like I said, just go through a list. Nowadays, you go through a list and then it's outbound chat or inbound chat. It's kind of like either the first step. What I will say is, for most coaches out there right now, and if you've been around for a little bit of time now, you're probably getting pitched every single day of the week. And I get that every day, not just from coaches, but from setters and closers as well. Once they figure out I do recruitment, I get all kinds of people sliding into the DMs. But the sad thing is, and I wrote about this yesterday, actually, I posted something on it. A lot of there's been a lot of negative feedback on the DM strategy or the DM process, from coaches maybe getting pissed off that they're getting pitched every day. And yeah, it's quite sad that that's the case, because it either, one, is going to put people off from doing it, which is fine, but it'll lose the effectiveness of it over time. So, as far as getting into people's DMs and everything else like that, there's typically two ways to do it. There's one that they go in and say, hey, this is what I do. Are you interested in it? Where it's just basically a cold intro, straight pitch. And then there's people who actually want to build a relationship before they do that. But unfortunately, because it happens so much, people get a bit skeptical when someone slides in and says, hey, how are you going? It's like, oh, I don't want to get pitched. It's like, and then they shut them down there and then. But like for me, I welcome it, because there's a couple of things that can happen. And this is really where I get most of my gold from, I would say, is that when I just entertain every single chat that comes through. And if I don't like what they've got to offer, I just say, cool, man, look, I just decline. I'm just not in a position, or I don't really want to do that. Right. But if there's the few really good appointment setters that catch my attention, and they catch me by surprise, where I know they're trying to sell me on something, but they're just so good that I want to engage in conversation, whether that's, dropping a GIF because I hadn't responded for 5 days in a row. Yeah. And I just laugh at the GIF and I go, oh, man, I better tell this guy I'm sorry for not responding. Or, making a comment on my post and I go, oh man, I should get back to this person. You sort of use whatever you've got in the online space, not just in the DMs, but outside of it as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the more human you can be doing that, the better it is. I think. I don't think there's a particular script that would, get somebody to do. And if there is, a bunch of people are probably already using it. So the more human you can be on it. And I think if you're on the receiving end of it, if you can be open to these things, man, you're going to learn a lot of how people slide into DMs, how good some of them actually do it, that you want to engage in conversation. And I would just model that. To me, that's why I entertain all of it. Now, I don't want everyone sliding in my DMs trying to pitch me something, but hey, I'm open to a chat all the time, because I feel like I learn. So yeah.
Patrick's open. He's ready to buy, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm ready to buy. And if I'm not, I'll say no. That's it. Or you won't hear from me.
I think it's always fun. I think just being human is, probably the best advice for any sales situation up until the close, where you need to not stop being human, but a bit of skill comes in at the end of the close if you need to objection handle, that kind of thing. Yeah. But in that introductory message, being authentic, being genuine, being human is huge. And it is a shame, because we are skeptical these days, right? We get a message from someone, and I'm looking at one right now. I'm looking at a message in my inbox right now, and all I can see is, would you, and I know that that's going to be something inviting me to do something or whatever. And they happen on Instagram all the time. Even when people are like being so genuine, they're trying to be genuine. They say like, oh, that's amazing. You're a marketer. What sort of steps do you need to take in your business to grow to the next level? It's like, you wouldn't talk to me like that to my face. Why are you 100%. Saying it in a message? It's weird, man. So I think that's actually a great skill in marketing, is copywriting the way you speak.
Yes.
And in sales, it needs to be the same thing. You need to speak like you're in front of the person, not just kind of a keyboard version of it.
Yeah.
I want to show you
100% agree.
Out anonymously a message that I got.
Right? Yeah, go for it.
And it was a guy who I think I even reached out to him to say hello, because I start a lot of conversations with coaches about the podcast. Hey, I saw your post, you want to come on the podcast. Sometimes that leads to, as you know, none of my guests on my podcast have ever gone on to buying anything from me, because that's not the point. But now I know an extra 50, 60 people who are in my network, right?
Yeah, 100%.
One guy, he was nice enough. And then he goes, do you have a vision you feel called to fulfill? And I was like, okay.
That's deep.
A bit of a grandiose statement. And then he gets into longer and longer sentences. And then he goes, human beings are very transparent. Why are you so sad, Alex? And I was like, I'm not sad. Does that ever work? Does that ever work as a pitch? Like just messaging someone saying why you're sad? Do you think that being antagonistic and calling people out on a sale is ever a good idea?
I've not used it before, and I know it doesn't spark me into action. If you're trying to be like that to get a bit of reverse psychology, there's probably other ways to do it. You know, I don't think that builds any trust by being antagonistic like that. You know, I mean, I would shut off to it pretty much straight away.
Yeah. What do you think are the mistakes that you are seeing in the kind of sales training world out there from influencers on the internet, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, the typical thing. I mean, there's one thing that you shouldn't do when you're sliding into someone's DM, and that's basically to say hi and nothing else. Like that's probably the worst opener that I've seen. Or you're going to get someone saying hi, or okay, what is it that you want, right? So at least say thanks for connecting, or hey, you know, like I really like your post. Like what most openers, you make a compliment to where they're at. Whenever I go into somebody and like I only really DM people I'm interested in talking to anyway, right? So I'll find something in their content, and if I relate to it, I'll mention it. If I don't, I'll just say thanks for connecting, and I sort of leave it at that for to start the conversation. And look, if anyone's listening that's in my DMs now, you'll know this is the case. This is what I do, right? But the just going on things that like probably the worst practices out there is to try to engage in like small talk, like that's probably the worst. You either go in and go deep on something to start a conversation, as in, not related to like your service or your program or anything like that, rather than saying, hey, how are you? Like, how's your day? Like that sort of stuff to me it just means that like, why are you starting a conversation basically is my question on it. So, look, I'll entertain it, and then they end up getting to the point of, what they're trying to sell. But yeah, sometimes I appreciate it when someone just dives in and says, hey, this is what I've got to offer. Do you want to join our group, or do you want to do this? And I just respond to it and say, cool, right, let me check it out. So I've seen that, approach. For me, it's not so bad,
Saves a lot of time, right?
Saves
time when
saves time.
Get it out of the way. Imagine if a door-to-door salesman came to your door, knocked on the door, and said, "Hey, how's your day going? Oh, nice house you got here," and then it's never got to the point. You'd be like, "Get off my porch."
Yeah, get off my property. So that's actually the best analogy for it. That is actually pretty accurate. You just wouldn't do that, right? Like you just wouldn't. Like a cold caller is not going to ring on the phone and say, "Oh, so what's been happening? How's things in your life going right now?" Not with at least a bit of context of, hey, I'm calling because of this, at least like that. It's just, but I get it, man. I get that there's like a lot of different methods, to be able to do the DM chat, but it also depends like what's on your profile, what's the content that you've got. So when people come in and they're having a conversation, if they can see things on your profile that maybe they're actually interested in, like you just don't know until you engage with them in the first place. Some of the people that try to pitch me end up becoming clients because they like, it's okay, hey, your chat process is pretty average, man. Like probably, can I give you some tips on maybe what would make it better? Try it on your next one and let me know how it goes. So, I've had a couple of those where they've come in like just a little bit off. And that's what I was saying. Like you just never know. If you entertain a conversation, you just never know where it might go. Like you might get invited to a podcast. You might get, hey, I know somebody that you might be able to help. Like if you just built that little bit of connection, So I was in a chat with a new friend request from last night, and I mentioned something about her profile, just a question that she had, and we got on a call this morning to talk about it. She's not ideal client, and I'm not her ideal client, but we've just formed a little bit of a network so that if we cross paths again, that at least we're on the forefront of each other's mind. So that's kind of what the game is now. It's 2 years ago, you could get on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm looking for 3 coaches that want to do this. And then bam, you're in a sales call. Like it used to be like that. But the game's a little bit longer now.
It is. And, I mean, I'm in the marketing world, and, advertising is getting more expensive, and people they know the strategies. Most people are pitching everyone else, and people know that a free book's going to lead to some sort of email or some sort of phone call, or they know a free webinar is going to have a pitch at the end, and then know a free session is not a free session anymore. So the process is always evolving and changing as people get more knowledgeable. Just like probably it was easier to be a door-to-door salesman 50 years ago and a cold caller 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Back in Jordan Belfort's day.
Yeah.
If someone called
100%.
and tried to sell me stocks over the phone now, I probably wouldn't have a bar of it. So we're all getting smarter and more and more skeptical as we go.
Yeah.
So having said that, when you're selling a high ticket product and teaching people to sell a high ticket product, I mean, what do you see as the biggest thing we can do to kind of quash someone's skepticism and build some trust with them in a space where they can't even see our face?
Yeah, it's a good point, man. So, like, in terms of, when we get into building sales processes and, getting on the call, like, what's really important is at first to understand the client journey, like what you're saying, right? And how sophisticated they are, as in, like, how knowledgeable is the market that you're talking to about the problem and the solutions that's out there. Some of them don't know that there's a problem, so we got to educate them on what the problem is so that they need a solution for it. There's, markets out there, they're very problem aware. They just trying to find a solution for it. And if you happen to be that, then that's a good thing. And then there's the ones like the market that I'm in now, where they're very sophisticated. They know the marketing techniques, they know the strategies, they know they've got a problem, and they know that there's a solution out there for it. So, like in marketing, you'll know that. In sales, it's pretty much the same. And I suppose, like, from once you know what that is, you can sort of have your conversations geared towards educating them on one of those things, whether, it's a problem that they have, that there's something underneath that, or, there's a problem that they know, and then there's different solutions that's out there. Or if they're really sophisticated, I know this is your problem, these are the solutions, but what's really the problem? Like, that, what's really going on inside of that? So the questions change slightly, I feel, having done with, like, real new markets versus sophisticated markets. It's really about the questions that you ask. I don't feel like you can ask the same question to a let's call it like a novice, less sophisticated market to a more sophisticated market. I think there's slight variations that need to happen, sort of along the way.
Do you have examples of what might be considered a more novice market and a more sophisticated market?
Just an example, like, say, B2C, biz op type of offers, let's say, where, and the classic one is, from people who want a new opportunity to get online, where they're firstly dabbling in to figure out, okay, what can I do online? Do I want to be a coach? Do I want to be a e-com business, drop shipper, that sort of thing, where they're searching their problem is they want to make more money. How do I do that? That's kind of the
problem aware, but not solution aware.
Yeah. And they're searching for that. They probably haven't tried a lot of different things either. So when you start talking about how you can build a e-com brand, or you can become a coach, it's like, whoa, that's a new thing, right? And that's exciting. Whereas the more sophisticated people, like yourself, you're dealing with businesses who want to grow. And do they do that organically, or do they do that through paid ads? Like, they're really problem aware, that they've got good goals to grow. They're just trying to figure out what's the best thing, or they know that they need to run ads. Like, who is the person that's going to run ads for them? Is more the other. So they've probably been through a few different sales calls already. They've analyzed who gives what offers are out there. So it's more around the offer that you're giving them, and how it's different to what they've tried before, and why those things didn't work in the past. So, there's a bit of framing around that. I know with most coaches who have tried everything, even people who have looked to hire appointment setters in the past, the reason why they haven't gone with, some of the bigger guys is purely on cost, and they don't feel like they need that level for right now in their business, because they're still the bottleneck. They're still thinking that. So it's it's a little bit of education around that, like why they didn't do you go with your competitor, and why they should probably use services like like yours, because you'll simplify it, you'll meet them more around where their business is. So those are the sort of things that would be different in those markets.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I think you're completely right. Often when you're selling business to business, B2B, the person who's being sold to kind of knows they're being sold to. They're there for a reason. They know the solution. They're seeing if you can deliver it. B2C, they need a little more education to kind of move them along that line, because the days are gone when you can just say, here's an opportunity to make some money. Do you want to do it? Because that's, that would seem like a scam straight away. So just educating those people, showing them testimonials, and making that part of the sales process, even in between calls, right? That's are you seeing that as a powerful thing? Like appointment setters sending like a resource or a testimonial to a lead in between the two phone calls?
Yeah, that's very, very much common. What we find for not the less sophisticated markets, like a good VSL or a good webinar, good training piece, like they should watch it so that they get educated. So then you don't do it as much on the call.
Yeah.
The more sophisticated guys, it's almost like you just give them the option. If you want to watch it, you watch it. If you don't want to watch it, we're going to talk about it anyway, right? So most of the time, my experience in the sophisticated market, they don't even watch it.
Yeah.
They kind of flick through, okay, I've seen that funnel before, or they'll, I'm going to use that funnel as a swipe file and then I'll keep it. And then they sort of get on the phone call. But in either case, like, should still be providing something to either prep them for the call, frame up the call of what it's going to be about, or some real education, if they're in the less sophisticated, sort of group. So there's a lot of power in it for sure.
And you talk about, we talk about objection handling, and in the close, you got to handle the objections of, we've all been in the situation. So man, do you want to do it? Oh yeah, I've got to check with my wife, or I just got a bill on my car, or oh no, my cat's sick, or it's my fucking dog's birthday, or whatever.
Got some good handling.
Ones. At that point, you got to have some real skills to flip it back around and get them over those objections. And that can be, not everyone's favorite thing to do, but you speak about pre-objection handling, and that can be done in part of that process we were just talking about. How do you see pre-objection handling? What does it mean? How do you do it?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I suck at objection handling. Like, I think full stop. I don't enjoy it, because when it comes to objection handling, especially at the end, they've kind of made up their mind and they're just either deflecting or they're just trying to come up with something. And I've had some really good ones where, my husband's got the credit card, I'll just go get it. And then they just disappear, and I've heard even worse than that, where, people have passed away all of a sudden. Knock on wood, I'm not sure that's the case, but, sometimes you get that sort of feeling. But the pre-objection handling is not so much, just firing off objections and saying, hey, do you have this objection? But there's, like in most businesses, there's like three most common ones that people get, right? It's time. Like, now's not the right time. There's the money objection. And also there's the partner objection. They're the three most common. Like, in all the things that I've done, those are the ones that come up.
Yeah.
So those are easily pre-handled during the call, because if you do it during the call and you bring it up, so for example, the time situation, look, if you are going to take on this project with me, or if you're going to jump into my program, I just want to check, do you actually have the time to be able to implement this? This is like halfway through the call, well before you even talk about your program or your service. It's only through the discovery. And if people say, yeah, look, I'm a bit busy, like I'll probably start it a month later, you can start to handle that right there and then, before you start talking about your process and what you're going to give them.
Yeah.
So that they can't use it in the end, so then you isolate it. And if in the end they give you something like, oh, I don't really have time. Well, actually, you said at the start, because I checked in with you, you said that you did have time. So I'm guessing that maybe time's not the issue, that you're uncertain about something. So if you want to talk about that, I'm happy to do that, So it's that sort of thing. The partner objection, again, same thing. If you know that they're a couple, like 9 times out of 10, they need to talk to each other about money, right?
Yeah.
I think that's just a given. So with regards to, doing the partner objection, it's like, okay, cool. Like, this is great. You got some awesome goals. I just want to ask, like, have you spoken to your partner about this already? If they say they haven't, then you can start exploring that. Okay, look, if you were to talk to your partner about solving this problem, what do you think they would say? Like, if you joined a program like this, what would they say if you were talking to her right now?
Yeah.
Again, this is before you even start presenting your offer to them. So at this stage, they have to give you like some sort of response that will help them get through that next thing that you're going to tell them, right? Because at this point, they should be curious, like, what is the actual offer? So if you put that gate in front of them, they'll tell you either, yep, look, I need to talk to my partner about it, in which case you can say, hey, maybe we should bring them in. Or they'll say, no, I can make all the decisions myself. Present your offer, get to the end. Yeah. What do you want to do? I need to talk to my partner about it. Oh, hang on a sec. We talked about this. You said you were pretty good. So I don't believe it's a partner objection or it's a partner issue. Like, what is it that you're not sure about? And then you can talk about it that way. So that's kind of the flow of, how we would do pre-objection handling along the way. So, but time and partner are the most common ones and the easiest ones to get out of the road. So at least you can't use it as an excuse.
Yeah. Well, I'm seeing partner in the business world more as well, when it's a business partner, or I generally would call it the permission objection. They've got to go and ask someone else, whether it's a boss or a manager, or they are the decision maker, but they need to kind of get a confirmation. Yeah. And often in my job, when I'm selling to a business, it generally becomes a situation of, I'll send you a proposal, look over it, and sign it yes or no.
Yeah.
And that's been a whole new ball game for me, because none of my clients in the marketing space I've ever closed there and then. It's they go and think about it, and it's an ROI decision. That's a very, very different one. But back in the day, man, I was in a whole different style of sales, and that was high ticket closing on the phone, objection handling, looping people around and around and around. And it was exhausting. And what happened to me, what was really interesting, was when I had someone who needed the most objection handling, and I was doing my best selling, got them really emotional, and they were super ready to buy and do it. 9 times out of 10, the next day, they freaked out and called me and canceled it. Yeah. Because that level of objection handling that you were talking about, when you have to, overcome things at the end of the phone call when their mind's already made up, all you're doing is you're just temporarily changing their mind, but they've already made their mind up, right? So, I mean, do you think that is even, the controversial opinion, do you think that looping people and really like hard closing people who have given you objections is a good idea?
I think it depends on the offer. Again, same thing. If it's if they're a sophisticated, prospect or not. I think there's a time and a place for it, especially if you're offering them something that could like change their life. With the less sophisticated market. With sophisticated guys, like, they know what, most of the time they know what you're doing anyway. So if you do it well before when they expect it, like, it's a big pattern interrupt for them, and they just don't expect it, So I think that, there is a time and a place for it. But it's got to be to the right people, and what you're offering them, like, it has to be rock solid. I mean, you can't just offer a 10K program if you think it's going to work. If they do the work, but if you're 100% and you can deliver that, I would do it for sure.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. It's if you're confident that what you're doing is actually good for them, and if they leave, then you've done them a disservice by letting them leave, then put the hammer down a little bit. But it's not always right, and sometimes you can just be. Do you ever get on a roll and when you're just closing everyone? And your confidence level just goes like,
it's just right up there.
And then you just close everyone, and they're not all the right person or whatever, but you just will not take any shit. I mean, in in high ticket sales, I mean, probably way too big of a question, but when someone, can you tell when someone's giving you a genuine objection that is true and when someone is making an excuse?
Generally speaking, yeah, you can, but it's always good to clarify anyway. Like,
Is there a way
what does that mean?
you can kind of tell? Is that all done in the pre-phone call, or is there like a tone of voice thing?
It's more tone of voice. Yeah. I think if they're quick to answer, like people who you can hear the tonality in their voice change a little bit when they're not being 100% genuine. But you could also, like, if how is it? It's like an upward tonality is typically when they're not 100%. It's like, how do you feel about this? I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. Like that's an obvious one, right? But you can pick the subtleties in it. But if people are like, how do you feel about this stuff? I know, yeah, really good. Like they're sure and they're confident with how they say it. That's typically a good thing. But if they say, yeah, I just need to think about it, like that has to be clarified.
Yeah.
For sure. And the easiest way to do it is if you've got to clarify someone is look, if someone says I need to think about it, depending on what it is, a lot of people will say, like, what is it that you need to think about? And that leaves the door wide open. So you want to narrow down to maybe like, is it this or that type of objection handling? So, okay, cool. So let me ask a question. Like, if you want to think about it, are you thinking about the cost that it is to get into this program? Or are you thinking about if the program is the right thing for you to do? So you kind of isolate, you don't give them any options other than those two things. And it doesn't have to be that, but it could be anything, right? They could have a different objection about something else. But if you can isolate whether it's a price thing or if it's a money thing, or if they're just not sure, then if you isolate that, then you can find a real objection behind it. So typically when you get one objection, that's not the real objection. There's something underlying in it. They're just afraid to say it. So that's one way for us. That's what we do to try to isolate those sort of things. So
that would be a massive bombshell for a lot of people to hear that probably. When someone gives you an objection, it's not the real objection. And they generally do come down to time, money, or permission, right? So just that digging, I think, why do you feel that way? Is that the kind of line of questioning you take? Like, what is it about that you're worried about? And just lead the conversation to the root of what they're worried about? Yeah,
almost. You kind of want to give them two routes that they can go down, right? So you don't leave it wide open. So if there's an objection about, look, I think it's probably it's a money thing. You can isolate a money aside. Like if money wasn't an issue, is this something that you would want to do, or would you be 100% in on this? So then if they say yes and they're like 100% yes, then it's a matter of logistics and payment. But if they say, look, I do need to think about the money. So if, even though if money wasn't aside, like I would do it, but I need to think about the money. So then there's something else in that.
Yeah.
And then you can clarify that. Okay. So if we're talking about money, is it that you don't know if you should pay for it, or you don't know how you can pay for it?
Yeah.
There's a difference between those two, right? So, it's always like you can clarify and just keep digging in. But I think if you have a resolution for them, it's easier to pick one or the other. That's what we find. Then you're not going around in circles trying to dig deep, and it's already a tense situation, right? So you kind of got to lead them to that way. Yeah, man. So that's typically how we would do it.
Do you believe in the notion of always ask one more time?
Sometimes. Sometimes. It depends how the vibe of the meeting. I like to just to double check on it. But sometimes if the temperature's not there, you kind of just have to leave it, because it makes it really, really awkward to follow, and it takes away the chance for you to follow up if it's there's a genuine concern.
Yeah. And at what point do you know it's time to give up on a close?
Look, I've had a lot of this where I'm trying to, get through all of it, ask all those questions, and then you get to a point where now you're trying to shift their belief, shift their identity. And I think once they start agreeing with you, and then they keep giving you excuses, I sort of move on and just work out the best way to do a follow-up. after that, where you're giving them, you're dropping them all your best lines, and they're like, yeah, I agree. I just have to, I just have to work this out. It's like, I think that just goes nowhere, and just ends up pisses me off. So I just leave it. I just kind of leave it, and just do a really good follow up, and hope that that was a genuine thing. Doesn't happen all the time, but yeah, if it happens, that's how we would do it.
Yeah, they shut down at a certain point. I wanted to ask you, kind of moving into the close of this podcast, who's the best salesperson you've ever seen? Do you have a story about the best sale that someone did to you, or that someone?
To me, yeah, I do. I mean, it was actually, I remember this because I talked to my wife about it. At Barbecues Galore, the best salesperson that ever. So I went in there wanting to buy a Weber barbecue. Right, this is my favorite salesperson ever. But I went in there and I went, hey, I want to buy this particular barbecue. I've researched it. I've done all of that. I just want that. And it would have been an easy transaction. She could have just picked up the barbecue and just walked me out the door. I would have bought it. She goes, oh, that's a great barbecue. Can I ask, like, what sort of cooking do you do on it? And I said, oh, this is the sort of cooking that I want to do. Because are you stuck on this one, or can I share with you one thing that might be a bit better for what you want to do? And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. And I'm thinking, okay, just show me anyway, but I'm going to grab this. And then she just showed it to me. Like it was a Ziegler Brown barbecue.
Yeah.
And she goes, it's got this. Price wise is about the same. So it's not really an issue there. But here you get this, and this is probably the outcomes that you can get from this barbecue. And man, I bought the barbecue, I bought the cleaning kit, I bought some buckets to go with it, I bought tongs, I bought a wok at the same time, and I went all out. Probably doubled what I was going to spend on a different barbecue that I had my mindset on that particular Weber barbecue. So that was the best experience that I've had in sales. I felt bad not buying a bunch more shit from her, because I was like, that was pretty masterful. I thought that was good.
That's amazing. You went in for one thing, saying, I want to buy this, and she sold you something completely different. Double
the spend, and I've still got the barbecue, and I actually really love it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And is there a sale you're most proud of? It doesn't have to be a big one.
For me, I've got a couple of good ones. One that stands out is when I was doing real estate, I walked into some client's house, took them just before I was about to present. She said, all the things, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. And I said, well, that's all the things you said you don't want. That's exactly what I've got to sell you. So you tell me if you want me to sell it to you, or do you want me to walk out the door? And she goes, you know what, just sell it to me anyway. And yeah, we built no rapport. Walked in, it was cold. I didn't get any water. She didn't offer me anything. And by the end of it, they signed and they showed me all around their house. Got a drink of water, even got an OJ. So that's probably one of my favorite ones.
Well done, man. Well done, bro. And for you, like, what do you think is going to be the next step for you as a salesperson? Like, what's your goal?
Yeah, for me, I just probably want to build more sales managers. That's kind of the next step. I know we can do really good, put together good setters, good closers, but to be able to manage culture, manage teams, high performance, chilled out, relaxed teams, like have somebody well-rounded enough to be able to do not all of it at the same time, but to have people in place to do that. I think that's where sort of our next business level is going to be. So some done for you sales management is the goal for next year.
I'm looking forward to it. I would love to absolutely get a hand with that. As you know, as I said on the podcast already, I've bottlenecked my business. Actually, no, my twins have bottlenecked my business a little, because I've got time for pretty much everything except go out and, speak to new clients on the phone.
Yeah.
That's more of a time of the day sensitive thing sometimes. Yeah. And so I'm looking to kind of build a team around that. And it's that funny little balance of, do you go and get more leads so that until you can't close them and they get someone to help, or do you get someone to help you close them and then go and get the leads to fulfill that job? Bit of a chicken the egg thing. It keeps happening to me, man. It keeps happening to me. But I'm at a point where I think I need to cut back on my own input and income to then kick off like 2022 with a team of 4 rather than just being me. And then the end of 2022, beginning of next 2023, it will look very different to how the beginning of this year looked, because 100%. Of investing in things like what you do. Hiring a great sales team opens up the business to a whole new level, man. Actually, on that note, what do you think? Do you think I should go and get the leads first and then get to a point where I can't close them? Or do I go and get the salespeople first and then just fill them up with leads? Once I've got people who are good.
That's a good point, man. So for you, I would get a commission only setter and just jam them with leads, and then you do the close. I think that's probably the best first step, man.
The best first step for a coach, a consultant who just needs to just increase their capacity a little bit.
Increase their capacity, because then you'll have more headspace to get new leads, right? So, because then you start getting leads, you get the overwhelm, you have to shut it down, you lose momentum to try to find someone. That person doesn't work out, so then you got a bunch of leads that doesn't get serviced.
Yeah.
So at least if you've got someone commission only, set the expectations straight, then you can put some headspace into really driving the leads. And at least you got two people that can handle them. And once you've got enough, you just have to maximize on it and not waste them. So that's what I think.
All super tangible. I think like what you're doing for, small to medium coaching and consulting businesses is actually a service that not a lot of people know they need, but when you can go out and help them build it, they'll realize how valuable that is. So I really look forward to your business growing over
awesome,
the next
man.
year. I look forward to you hopefully helping my business grow over the next year. And you know what? We'll probably both sell each other something at some point.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, man. I appreciate your time, man. Been cool hanging out.
Thank you so much. Go and have a wonderful afternoon with the guitar and babies and your phone calls and everything. And
that's it, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Is there anything you like to plug quickly before we go?
No, look, just real simple. If anyone wants to learn or pass on some skills to their team and they don't have time to do that, or they just want to check out some of the training that we do, I do have a group that's called High Ticket Sales Secrets that you guys can jump into and get some of the free stuff in there.
Awesome. We'll put that. We'll put a link to that in the content from this podcast, man.
Awesome.
I very much look forward to hopping in there myself. Thank you so much, Patrick.
I appreciate it, man.
Pleasure having you on, bro.
No worries.
Anyone listening on Spotify, thank you so much. We'll be back in a few days' time. Anyone watching live, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. I'll be back in a couple of days' time with a new episode of Coaches to the Moon podcast. But until then, much